Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Monday. What week is this? Is anyone keeping week? Is anyone keeping track?
Week 6?
Is it?
No,
It can't be 6 already, is it?
no way.
1, 2, 3, 4,
5.
6.
Damn.
This is week 6. Unbelievable.
Already how?
Oh, it goes so fast, you know? Always goes so fast.
Already halfway. How many weeks do we have?
13
13. Oh.
plus exam week is 14. So yeah, we're almost halfway through this course, which is crazy. How is that possible?
It's just a blink of an eye.
It goes really quick, hey? Man. Okay, well, I guess then since it's going so quickly, without further ado, here. We should definitely start. Okay. Right. So we were talking last week about sex and gender and what those two things are. And we said, of course, that sex is a biological thing. Gender is a culturally constructed thing, right? So yes, we have biological sexes, but we've also created this idea of what men are like and what women are like, right? And we've kind of connected these to our biology, right? A physical body equals a man, a certain physical body equals a man, and a certain physical body equals a woman, right? But as we're seeing in this documentary that we were watching on Friday, it's not quite so simple, it seems, right? For most of us, it is simple, right? Our gender identity, how we feel inside, is aligned with our physical body. But for some of us, that's not the case, right? Good morning. That's not the case. And again, we're not entirely sure why that is at the moment. We're not sure why some people develop a different gender identity than their physical body would suggest. But, you know, for the moment, the why doesn't really matter so much because we know that that's the experience that these people are having, right? So to sort of better understand that, of course, we were watching this documentary. I asked you a bunch of questions, and maybe we can just go over some of these just to get our minds going and review, get ourselves caught up to where we were on Friday. So let's see. Actually, we answered a lot of these. Let me ask you. Hey, good morning, Anna. What's the first? The first question is how does socialization play a role in the lives of these young people? So, Arena, what do you think?
Maybe
I'll give you a hint. The answer is the same for all of us, really. How does socialization play a role in? Well, actually, it's not the same for all of us, but it's half the same.
maybe teach how to behave, what to wear.
Yeah, we're kind of told what to wear and what.
How to act.
Yeah. Right. So all of our societies have gender roles, and they've kind of taught us how to behave and how to act and kind of how to think and feel about things, right, based on our sex assigned at birth. But of course, what's different for these people?
They've been told to do that, but it just doesn't match with what they want.
Yeah, right. So they're in the wrong class, if you will, right? They're being taught how to be one gender, and they're feeling like no, you're wrong. I belong over there, right? That's my gender over there. You're teaching me the wrong gender. You're dressing me wrong. You're trying to get me to be this way, but really I'm that way, right? And we saw what's really interesting is that some of these young people they figure out what's wrong at different ages, right? Some of them are quite young, right? I think I think Ari, the young man with the guitar, he said, yeah, like kind of as soon as I was old enough to dress myself, I kind of figured out that like, oh, I feel like I want to be this, right? I'm not this thing. I'm something else, right? And some people take a little bit longer to figure out, and that's understandable, right? Because we don't really, up until recently anyway, and I won't speak for your societies, but in our society, we didn't really have any room for transgender people. We didn't talk about transgender people. No parents really expected that their kids might be transgender, so nobody talked about it. You know, it was, and if it did get talked about, it was weird or bizarre, or it was something to be joked about, right? Haha, a man in woman's clothing, right? It's funny, right? But yeah, for a long time, we didn't really have any space for it. We didn't really talk about it. And so you can understand how confused these young people would have felt having this feeling, but nobody else seems to be having it. Nobody's talking about it. There doesn't seem to be anyone like them in society, right? They don't meet any other trans people. And so what do you think their kind of feeling is? Like, what's wrong with me, right? Why am I so, good morning. Why am I so different? Why am I having these feelings? Why do I feel so sad or upset, right? And so, yeah, when things aren't talked about and there's no kind of space for them, people don't know how to understand their experience, right? For instance, nowadays in society, we talk a lot about mental health, right? And we talk about anxiety and depression and panic attacks and things like that. And so now, much more than, let's say, 20 or 30 years ago, children or adolescents or even adults, it's kind of easier for them to figure out that experience, right? If they're feeling low all the time, you know, they might say, oh, maybe I'm depressed, right? Maybe I have depression. Whereas 30 or 40 years ago, they might not have thought that. They might have said, oh, you know, just cheer up, you know, what's wrong with you, sort of thing. And because nobody was talking about depression, right? Or people who have panic attacks, if nobody's talking about panic attacks, it makes you feel like you're the only one, right? It makes you feel like you're strange and weird, and you keep your experience to yourself, right? Because you think, oh, I'm weird and everyone else is normal, right? And so these young people would have probably done the same thing. But of course, now we're getting to a point where people are talking about gender and transgender people, and you know, it's more common, well, because nobody talked about it before. Now people are talking about it, and now it's become a little easier for kids to talk about that, right? And I know that I've had transgender kids in my classes in the past. My fiance's had transgender students in her class as well, and so you know, it's becoming more. It's becoming more visible, right? And so, but again, you can imagine how difficult it probably was for some of these kids being in an environment where nobody was talking about it, nobody knew what it was, and so they probably really struggled to figure out why they were feeling the way they were feeling, right? And we saw some people have really supportive parents, it seems. I think Ari's parents are probably very supportive, even though they're not in the documentary. Zoe's parents, the girl in pink, her mom seems to be very supportive of her. But then we meet someone like Kai's mom, who's kind of, well, she's kind of struggling with it, right? She's, you know, she clearly loves her child, but she has trouble seeing him as he is, right? And again, I think part of that's probably understandable, right? She gave birth to a little girl, she raised a little girl, and now before her she sees a young man, right? And so it's probably tough to kind of switch your, you know, to switch over and think of your child that way, right? But still, yeah, she's still really struggling with it, right? Let me ask you this question here. Why was Kai asked so many questions about his gender identity and his sexuality, actually, rather than his athletic performance? What was happening there? Avi, what was happening there?
Could you repeat
I could. Number 4, why was Kai asked so many questions about his gender and sexuality rather than his athletic performance?
Because it just makes a better news for the people.
I guess that's part of it, right? It's a little more, a college basketball game is a college basketball game, but here's something new, right? And something maybe strange and scandalous, right? A gender transition on a women's basketball team, right? So, yeah, there's a certain, it really shouldn't be that sensational, but I'm sure that the news outlets probably played it that way, right? Why else? Why else were they asking him questions about his gender? Anna, what do you think?
Well, I think it's because he was like he was not. I mean, everyone was not there because he was a great athlete. It was because he was born that.
Right. Right, and so they were focusing on that because why were they focusing on that?
Because it's new.
Because it's
Like,
new?
They were knowing him as the athlete, like a woman athlete,
Yeah.
and now it's a boy.
Right.
So it's like a big change.
It is a big change, yeah. And I guess part of that is the fact that, he came out a number of years ago, right? And so as we move forward, we're talking about these things more and more, but as you go further into the past, people were talking about them less and less. And so it was something different, right? It was, wow, this is
How bizarre.
how bizarre, right? This is quite a bizarre thing. Let's report on this, right? But from Kai's perspective, of course, he was uncomfortable, right? What was he saying? Chen, what was he saying? Kai. What was he saying when he was talking about how the reporters, what the questions the reporters were asking him? What were his kind of feelings about that? Do you remember?
You should feel confused. You know,
Kai was feeling confused?
no.
No?
More like irritated.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think irritated is fair. I think he was a little upset. Avi, what do you think?
He was not. He couldn't understand why his gender would make a difference in the game.
Yeah, right? Because yeah, he's there to play basketball, right? And his gender and his, sexuality and his who he has a crush on and what's going on in his pants. I mean, that's all personal stuff, right? And we don't ask professional athletes those questions, right? You don't see that, at halftime or between the second and third period where they're, interviewing. You don't have reporters asking personal questions to players, right? The players would tell them to get lost, right? And so, but Kai unfortunately has to deal with that. He shouldn't have to deal with that, but he did have to deal with it because he's different, right? And people saw this as a big different thing, right? Hey David, we heard about some people we'll talk about this a little bit later today, but we heard about some people talk about pronouns, right? So usually if we're talking about a man, we use pronouns like he and him and his, right? And with a woman, we use she and her and hers. But why do some people not want to use pronouns that trans people ask them to? And you can think about Kai's mom as an example of that. Why might people not want to use certain pronouns?
I think for Kai's mom, because she knows that this person is a she.
Okay.
She's
I'm-
going to raise it.
Okay, I'm gonna press pause on that, but yeah, so the idea that she knows that Kai is a she. Okay, David, what do you think?
I think they are ready to
certainly it is a brand new thing, right? Especially because there are pronouns that have been made up, right? So for someone like Shane, who we met, Shane says, yeah, you should be, with me, you should be using male pronouns like he and him, right? And his. Those are the pronouns that are appropriate for Shane, right? But some people don't feel that they fit into one gender or another, right? And so they might ask you to refer to them as they, right? And so you're talking about usually they is plural, but here we're talking about one person, but we say they, right? And so that can be a little tricky, right? Especially for people who have spoken English for a long time and it's stuck in your brain and suddenly you're like, oh, I've got to switch gears, right? That can be tricky. There's some other pronouns that have been created as well, brand new words that are used. So yeah, it's new and it's different, right? And we might struggle with that. Why else might someone not want to use these pronouns? Who wants to help me here?
Maybe they don't accept it.
Don't accept what?
Change.
Don't accept change, or what else might they not be accepting?
Transgender.
Yeah. The idea of people who are transgender, or even that person, right? And so, again, think of, the first day if I just decided I was going to call you something different, right? Arena, I'm just going to call you Jennifer, okay? It's just easier, right? So what am I doing? Well, I'm refusing to see Arena's identity, right? Her name is part of who she is, and I'm saying, no, I don't see that. You're Jennifer, right? It's kind of funny to joke around about, but it wouldn't be funny in real life, right? It wouldn't be funny if I actually did that, right? The same thing as if I, decided that I was going to always refer to Avi as she, right? That might be funny the first time, but it would. The more times I did it, the less funny it would get, right? Quickly. And yeah, and there's other things going on with that too, which maybe we can talk about later. But yeah, when we don't when we don't call people appropriately, right? When we don't use their correct name, when we don't use their correct pronouns, we're kind of denying their identity, right? We're saying, I don't see you, right? You're not, you're telling me you're this, and I'm like, no, I don't see that, right? And I think that's kind of what's going on with Kai and his mom, right? His mom is, to some degree, saying, I don't see you, right? The way you are, the way you're showing yourself to me, I don't see that. I see something that's still up here, right? And how do you think Kai feels about that?
He just will feel sad, but you got no choice.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's probably going to keep trying to, work on his mom and try to get her to see things from his perspective. But yeah, he's probably going to be sad, right? He's probably going to be hurt, right? That's hurtful when people we love, particularly our parents, don't see us, right? That's really difficult, right? And there's a lot, when we look at Kai, there's a lot of great stuff, right? He seems like a nice guy. He seems like a nice person, professional athlete, right? He's well spoken. He's actually, I looked him up a little while ago, and he's doing, I think he's doing like motivational speaking with transgender and LGBT youth, and so he's kind of doing that. So he's giving back to the community, right? He's supporting people. He's a good guy, right? Handsome looking fellow too. There's a lot of good things to see there, right? And his mom is kind of saying, no, I don't see any of that, right? And that's really hard. Yeah, that really, right? That really hurts. Very quickly here, we said that some of the students, some of the male students were uncomfortable when Ari was in the change room. Why were they uncomfortable?
I know that this person is different.
Yeah, they know that this person is different, right? And what else are they seemingly concerned about?
Maybe they think that I will stare at them or.
Yeah, right. They're kind of, they know, right? Or they either know that Ari was born a female, right? Or they can't accept who he is, right? They can't accept him as a young man. And yeah, Arena's right. They're worried or freaked out or, about him looking at them. But again, what did we kind of agree about Ari's sexuality? Is he straight? Is he gay? Seems to be straight, right? He was pretty interested in Rachel showing up, and yeah, I get the feeling that he's interested in women. He's not interested in the other guys, right? He's not watching anyone pee, right? Nobody watches anyone pee, right? So yeah, they're kind of getting all confused, right? And they're thinking of, they don't accept his gender. They are, seeing him as maybe he used to be. They're either confused about his sexuality or they can't accept that. Or maybe they're just bullying him, right? Maybe he's just different. They think he's different and weird. And so they're going to go and tell the principal and say, oh, we're really uncomfortable with this. And I think he was watching us pee just to make trouble for him, right? And so it's probably all of those things, to be honest. But yeah, there's a lot of confusion, right? And people having trouble accepting people when they tell us who they are, right? And again, this is a question for all of us and all of you, is who gets to say who you are? Other people, or is it you? Who gets to decide who you are? Okay? Because if the answer is you, if you get to decide who you are, then they get to decide who they are too, right? And it's not really our place to question it, right? If Ari says, you know what, I know who I am, I'm a guy, I'm going to, good morning, I'm dressing as a guy, I'm living my life as a guy, I'm doing guy things, I'm dating girls because I like girls, this is who I am, then we kind of have to accept that, right? We shouldn't say, no, Ari, you're confused, you were born a girl and so therefore you got to be a girl, right? I don't know what all this guy stuff is. Maybe you're just looking for attention or whatever, and that's all junk, right? We've got to believe people when they tell us who they are, right? Because that's kind of a freedom that we all should have, right? A privilege, if you will, right? People who are cisgender, nobody questions who we are, right? Can you imagine if it worked the other way? If you said, no, I'm a man, and people are like, no, you're a woman. We're going to treat you as a woman. Yeah, go put on a dress. We don't accept you as a man. You're a woman. Right? That would be, but that's a privilege that we have, right? Nobody questions our gender identity because it's in alignment with our physical body. Transgender people don't have that privilege, right? Because those things are not in alignment, people question their gender identity. They question their sanity, right? They question whether they, really know what they think they know, or are they just, is it a lifestyle choice? Are they just looking for attention? Are they mentally ill, right? And none of those things are true, right? Nobody questions who you are, and so we shouldn't really question who they are either, right? We have to accept what people present to us, right? People telling us who they are. Last thing, actually, you know what? We'll save this question. We'll come back to it because there's a little more on dating in this second half, and so we'll talk about this question 7 in this part. Okay. So are we ready to jump back in to this? Okay. So for those of you online, I think we started at about 25, or we stopped, sorry, at about 25 minutes on Friday. And so what we'll do is we'll watch from 25 minutes to the end of it, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll talk about these last 3 questions. The link is in Microsoft Teams, and so online people will see you after the break, okay? hand back your quizzes. We'll go over them. I'll hand them back, but I still have to enter them in my spreadsheet. So I'll give them to you, but you got to give them back to me after, okay? Give them back to me after, and then I'll return them to you tomorrow. I just got to enter them, okay? So here we go. So Bosco, there you are, and Mr. David. And Cleo's not here, and Marina is here, and Anna is here. Robbie is here. Don is here. And Crazio is here. So if I sneeze in a second. There you go, sir. Shed is here. Oh. Sorry, I just sneeze. Okay. All right, so very quickly here, what is oppression? So if you gave me, the wording right out of the slides, then there's nothing I can do to take away marks from you. But keep in mind, oppression is a relationship, right, between a dominant group and a minoritized group. The dominant group usually has social and institutional and political power, right? And they're able to kind of enforce their prejudices on society, okay? So it's a high-level thing, doesn't have to do with personal interaction. It's a systemic thing, okay? The second one, why did blue-eyed children not succeed in Jane Elliott's class? Well, Jane Elliott kind of spread a stereotype, right? She socialized those students into thinking that blue-eyed kids were not as smart, not as well-behaved as brown-eyed kids. And what did we see? What did we learn about prejudice? Well, those prejudicial ideas start to come true, right? The blue-eyed kids did start to perform more poorly. The brown-eyed kids started to excel, right? They internalized those stereotypes and they kind of started acting them out, right? And they started acting them out whether it benefited them or whether it disadvantaged them. And so prejudices and stereotypes have a very strong effect because sometimes they have the habit of almost sort of coming true, right? People will kind of act them out. Stereotype, prejudice, and discrimination. Remember, stereotype is kind of a preconception or an idea that you have about people based on either an individual person or a group of people based on what you see, right? I see something about you, the way you're dressed, the way you look, the social group you belong to. Therefore, I think I know something about you, right? That's a stereotype. It provides us with information. Prejudices are based on stereotypes and they have an emotional or a judgmental component to them, right? So they have some idea about people or groups being particularly bad or particularly good for some reason, okay? A math teacher who might hope that all of his class is Asian, that's kind of a prejudicial it's a prejudicial idea. It's a positive one, right? Because he wants a bunch of Asian kids in his class because he knows the stereotype that Asians are good at math, right? That's a positive prejudice, but again, you can do that. And then discrimination is when you act on that prejudice, right? Either positively or negatively. Maybe you specifically do something or maybe you specifically don't do something, but you act to either include or exclude people based on your prejudices, okay? Number 4, the resume study, we found that the resumes got sent out. What were the results of the study? Well, we saw the white-sounding names got more callbacks than the black-sounding names, right? And that was true even when the credentials and the experience of the black-sounding names were actually higher than the resumes with the white-sounding names, right? There's discrimination happening there, right? But remember what we said, and some people kind of mess this up a little bit, but it's not so much about the white names, and it's not so much about whiteness in general, because what happens, at least in North America here, what happens is that people don't really think anything about the white names, because again, and this was an external or structural element of privilege. White people are seen as the normal, the default, right? They are not racialized, and they are generally not the subject of stereotypes, right? So when the hiring managers are looking at the white-sounding names' resumes, they're just seeing a resume. They're just like, yeah, okay, whatever. But when they see a black-sounding name, suddenly they start to see it through the eyes of their stereotypes about black people, right? They start to interpret what they see through that lens of stereotype, okay? So it's not necessarily about the white stereotypes or prejudice towards white people, it's the stereotype or prejudice against the black-sounding names, okay? An external and a structural element of privilege. Remember that external had to do with the way society is designed, what is normal and not normal, and of course the invisibility of privilege. Okay, so you could have said one of those three things. For internal, the four things have to do with the dominant group feeling that they are superior and they have a right to their position in society. The idea that they don't really know much about the minoritized group, but they aren't really embarrassed by that. They have a lack of humility towards that. The third one was, oh gosh, what is it now? Can't think of it. There's a third one. Then the fourth one is the invisibility of privilege, okay? So I'll just give you one really quick. A good external privilege or external thing is that society is designed for able-bodied people, right? So for the most part, the idea of stairs and chairs and, you know, all the visual things we have around us, society is designed assuming that you can walk around on your two legs, that your arms and your hands work, that you can see, that you can hear. Society is designed that way, right? And we make accommodations for people who have disabilities, but for the most part, society is designed for us. Can you imagine what the world would look like if none of us had eyes? What would the world look like if none of us had eyes? If we didn't use our visual sense at all? If we, you know, did things according to our other senses? This would be a totally different world, would it not? 100% it would. Internal privilege has to do with attitude, right? So people thinking they're superior. Chen, I think you were talking about in the story we read with the three-eyed and two-eyed people, right? And the girls in the sunglasses shop were looking at the two-eyed girl and saying, "Oh, can you imagine being born like that? Ugh, what happened to you?" Right? That's an internal element of privilege, right? They feel they're superior to the two-eyed person. They feel that they can just kind of lash out and not behave social rules and act rudely, right? That's all an internal thing. Okie dokie. Questions? Questions on that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll talk to you in just a second here. No, it's okay. I'm going to end the live stream now, and I'll see you guys who are online. I'll see you tomorrow, okay? So, yeah, bye.